Hey everybody, another episode of Off the Table here. I am Paulie V. I am joined by a special guest, a good buddy of mine, a buddy in the beer industry. You must have heard me and Kate talk quite a bit about beer, our love for beer. And this guy, he's a man of beer. I would like to introduce my good friend Eric. And you know what? I do apologize. How do I pronounce your name? Is it Lucier or Lucier?
Well, technically, the French version is Lucier, but we've dumbed it down, like we say for the Americans, and we've turned it into Lucier.
Okay, Lucier. So Eric Lucier we have on mic number 2 tonight, folks. And I have talked in the past about this show also, a lot of the topics that we talk about are just kind of off the wall. But I did say that I would go into a lot about podcasting production, and how to get things going. And this was the perfect opportunity to talk about those things rather than me just ramble on about them on my own, is to have somebody interested in starting a podcast possibly and having questions to ask me and have me answer questions for them and in turn answering questions for you. So Eric actually reached out to me and he was talking about possibly starting a podcast. And he wanted to come over and, pick my brain a little bit. And he was like, yeah, we could even do it on the mic so I could record it and, play it back for my potential co-host. And I was like, that's a fucking great idea, man. Let's, then you won't have to remember anything and try to remember shit and then text me and be like, what the fuck what did you say about this part?
No notepad. Notice, no pen, no notepad, nothing.
No pen, no notepad.
We have audio evidence of everything that you're going to be saying.
So Eric's totally just going to ask me questions and I'm going to rave them off. So anybody out there that is interested in starting a podcast, take note. Maybe download this episode if you're streaming it and then you can play it back. And I do recommend doing that. I'm just going to sidetrack a little bit here, Eric. I have mentioned this in the past. I do not have a formal website for hosting, so I have limited hosting space, so I do delete these. So if this is something you want to save for information for the future, I would recommend downloading it and saving it to your device for future listen, because it will not be there very long, because I pump about 2 to 3 of these out a week and they go away fast. So that being said, we will continue. So Eric, what is the first question that you have for me? You must have at least a main question. Like there's got to be one that's like the biggest thing. Like what?
I suppose. And this is the downfall of not having that paper, not having that pen, is I don't have that actual list of questions. And the later in the night I find I'm awake, the worse my brain is. So it's why I texted you and said, Is there a better time of day for you? I found that creatively 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm fantastic. 9 o'clock at night, I'm worthless.
Yeah. So. I'm kind of like, I'm kind of good on both spectrums. Like up in the morning, as long as I have some kind of caffeine or something, like I'm good to go. And then I have like a mid part of the day, and then like into the evening, early evening, where I'm like shit for brains. And then it's like I have a couple of beers, and then the fucking creativity just sparks again. So I get back up and going again.
Yeah, you work backwards. The second I have a beer, my motivation's gone. Of course, we just popped one, but hey, I'll be okay. So let's say, I guess not even a quick background, but for the last couple of years, I've been toying with the idea of a podcast. It's funny, I tweeted this a couple of months ago. I said, every time I think about starting a podcast, I think, there's already too many freaking podcasts out there. Why the hell do I want to start one?
Yeah.
And then the more you actually look into it, the more you realize that they say, hey, get a podcast out there, because there's actually unlimited amount of essentially audience out there. And if you've got a niche audience, then you're probably got a head start on people. So, all right. So that being said, all right, it looks like finally I've got an idea. I've got a podcast. I have an idea of where I want to go, what I'd like to do. So the idea, of course, is I didn't want to stumble out of the gate. So it was great to have an experienced friend, so to speak, that had one going. So I thought you'd be the perfect person to reach out to. So this is great. So about a year in, let's say you've learned your lessons, and you're already telling me about some of the upgrading of equipment you've done. So obviously you know a little bit of here and there. The number one lesson you've learned over the last year. We're going to start, I guess, sophisticated. So in a year, what have you? The number one takeaway that you have?
The number one lesson is don't buy shitty microphones to start with, and I know it's tempting. You're going to not want to spend a lot of money, and you're going to be like, oh, these microphones, it looks like they're going to work. They're going to work. And first, do your research on microphones. They say Dynamic microphones are the way to go, especially if you're in an area like what I use. This is kind of an open space. There's not a lot of shit down here. There's kind of an echoey thing going on. And with these dynamic microphones, it kind of cuts a lot of that background echo out. Like a lot of people want that studio sound, you know what I mean? Nice and quiet and not, voices bouncing off the wall, your voice coming into my microphone, my voice going into your microphone kind of thing. And I do have a little bit of that down here, usually when I have a couple of people, but when I'm alone, it's fine because I just talk at a normal, like a low voice, and I can get rid of that just by not being so loud and having my voice bounce off all the walls. So a good microphone is key. And I did fuck up because I bought a lot of shitty microphones to start with. So a lot of money got wasted there. So I would say the first thing is to do some research on some microphones and get a good microphone. If you're concerned with sound, if you're not concerned with the quality of your sound, if you just want to get your voice out there and get your message out there, then it doesn't matter what microphone you use, as long as you have one that's, halfway decent and not like a webcam mic or, a shitty, just piece of shit microphone that plugs in USB. There are plenty of good microphones that plug in USB, but you know what I mean? Just something kind of like, a $20, you don't want a $20 Radio Shack microphone and podcasting on that. You want something decent. And that was the first lesson that I learned for sure.
Excellent. Well, equipment is certainly something that needs to be at the forefront. We need to be able to obviously get the voice out there, get the message out there. So past the microphone, what do you see as the necessary equipment needed to record that podcast and get it up posted somewhere?
There are definitely many methods of getting your podcast onto a hard drive in a format that you can post online for podcast people to listen to. There are audio interfaces that you can use to plug into your computer via USB, and then you can plug your microphones into those and record, and then use software. There's software such as there's one that's, I think it's free. It's called Audacity. I've never used it, but I've heard a lot about it, and I'm pretty sure it's free, and a lot of people use it, and it seems to be decent. I use a program for post-production because I don't actually record directly to the computer. So I use one called Adobe Audition that I'm sure a lot of people out there have heard of. It's good for post, and you can live record with that as well. Record right to the program. My thing is the reason I actually use a portable recorder to record that to capture the audio. Computers, I have an audio interface that I could have used when I started, but I also had a portable recorder that I used for video production sound when I did video production. So I would record all my sound externally through the portable recorder, and I already had that piece of equipment, and I thought that was just the way to go for me because I already had it and I didn't have to spend any extra money on a new audio interface, because the audio interface I had at the time was pretty old. It was dated, and I don't even think there were drivers for the computer at the time when I was checking it out. So I used that, and after using it, I realized how versatile it was. Computers can shit the bed on you. So mid-recording, if something shuts down, if the power goes out, anything, mid-podcast, you could lose your recording. And I just didn't like the idea of that. I don't have a battery backup here to save me from all that stuff. And the portable recorders, they run on battery and on, external power. And as long as you have charged batteries inside the unit and you're running it on external power, if the power was to go out, you'd still be rolling. You know what I mean? So you wouldn't lose that. And it's portable. So anytime you want to go anywhere and record and you want to do something somewhere else, you can take it. And it just records to SD cards that you can plug into your computer, and essentially just creates a middleman. You know what I mean? So I know a lot of people want to eliminate the middleman, but the middleman's a good thing in this particular aspect of, for this particular application, because it stores all your shit and you don't have to worry about losing it in the mid process of recording. So as soon as you're done with your shit, it's on a card. You take out the card, you plug it into your computer, or the audio interface can plug right into your computer, or the portable recorder can plug into your computer, and you can just transfer the files as if they were like, an SD card reader or whatever. And not to mention, the portable recorder is actually also an audio interface. So it can be used for many things. And I think for me, that's the way to go. I know a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people just record right to their laptop through an audio interface. And that's fine too. It does work. It does work good. I found I was fortunate enough to already be in the position where I already had one. And I have upgraded since, and I did buy another portable audio recorder. So that's the way I go. And I definitely feel it's the best way. I know there's other methods. There's plenty of methods and they all work just as good. But for me personally, for my own personal comfort, I like to have this because this is every time flawless every time. And they record full wave, like craziness. What am I recording at right now? 96 hertz, 24-bit. It's untouchable. It's like, that's like shooting RAW for your camera. When photographers shoot RAW, there's like all this data that's in that raw image that they can bring back and mess with in post. The same thing goes with shooting with recording in WAV. So you record in WAV and there's all this data there. Like it might be a flat image or a flat sound when you get it on your computer. But like when you're doing post stuff, like a lot of the stuff that you can tweak, like so much stuff comes back and it's not a compressed MP3 file where like that's already compressed all this stuff down and you've lost all that data. You can bring back shit. You can get rid of stuff. It's just amazing. So I highly recommend them. And I know you can record WAV, going through all that other stuff too with the computer, but it just gets a lot more confusing. This shit goes right to a card. People know cards, nowadays with cameras and stuff and phones, you pop a card out, you pop it into your computer, all the files are there. Boom, good to go. I find that that's the best recording method.
Excellent. So having that as a background, so to speak, so we can get an idea of what to get for equipment, so to speak, or something to put an eye on. So go out and say record an episode and load it into the computer. How much time are you spending on post on a typical episode?
Typical show, most podcasters do about an hour show. Sometimes you get about 10 minutes past that. Sometimes they reach into the hour 20 mark. And it just all depends on the content that they have and like, how far the conversation goes. So you have roughly, I'd say on average about about an hour and 5 minutes to an hour and 10 minutes of stuff to cut down. I've never done a show like through an audio interface going into the computer, but I got to imagine that it's the exact same way. You're going to end up with files that you have to mess with. So you usually end up with, that's where it gets a little tricky. So with the portable recorders, they record multi-track. So you can record everybody's mic individually. I'm not sure how the audio interfaces work. I know that they usually accept up to 2 microphones, 2 XLR mics. And I don't know if they mix them down as a single track or if they record them separately. But let's just say for the sake of our, argument that they record separate tracks just like this does. So I would just drag each track into my editor, which is Adobe Audition is what I use. You can drag the first mic track down and then drag the second mic track down and they'll magnetically snap together so they're on the same time and everything. That just takes a couple of seconds to do, transferring it over to the computer. And I throw in intro music real quick, which I already have saved and cut up on my computer. So I just drag and drop, and then I can edit some fades if I need to, if I want it to fade at a certain point. It takes me roughly, I think that and the outro music. I can cut a show in about 25 minutes, I think, at post-production. If I'm doing it like, if nobody's talking to me and I'm just sitting there going, 25 minutes done. And then posting it online takes about 10 minutes to upload and, type in your tags and your title and your quick description of the show. Yeah, it's not a long process at all. It can get monotonous. It's like doing the show is the fun part. And then afterwards, cutting the show up is fun for me too, because I really am techie and I love to do the editing stuff and make it sound good and make sure it's sounding good. But once it gets to the posting it online part, I'm just kind of like, I'm already done with this now. I wish it was just already up.
So speaking about posting it online, That's obviously probably the most important aspect to actually get your voice and get your story out there. So you've got your, say, your domain name, you've got your podcast name, you've got your concept and everything. It needs to go somewhere. So I'm sure there are services that will take care of it for you, but let's say we're doing a DIY. Where should it go, and how do you go about applying to get it there? And
that's that is the trickiest part. That is the part that when it got down to it, like, yeah, you get all this equipment, and then you get a show concept, you get everything. You think you're all set to go. You record a show, and then it's like, excuse me, how are people going to fucking hear this thing? And I got to tell you, this was the trickiest part for me, but it's not as difficult as it may seem. And I didn't have anybody help me. I tried. I reached out for help. I like podcasters that I know, that I became fans of their shows. I would reach out to them and I'd be like, hey, love your show. Just curious. Like, how do you get this out here?
Crickets, right?
Yeah. People just, I would get some response, but not like, it would be responses like, I don't know, like this guy handles that part, that kind of thing. So you're like, well, I could never get a definitive answer. Or one, show that I listen to, I'm a big fan of. When they started their show, somebody else took care of that. And like they set the whole part up where it goes online automatically once you upload somewhere. So now that like whenever they do the show, all the guy has to do is upload. And he's like, I don't know how that other shit got established, but all I know is I upload the show and it goes and it's there. So I had to figure all that shit out. So I just read and listened, and I would try to find podcasts about podcasts, basically what we're doing right now. And I could not find that show. That show did not exist. There would be shows they'd talk about basically the other stuff we were talking about, but like the getting it onto the internet and like where it went and how people accessed it was like never available. I'm like, why? This should be out there. Like this seemed like the hardest thing ever. So you need a good website, first of all, with hosting. And there are free ones out there, but I got to tell you, that's what I'm using right now for the show that you're listening to this on. And I had a better place before on a show that I was on, where we had unlimited storage, unlimited bandwidth, all that stuff. So you just posted and it was there. Now, like I said in the beginning of this show, I'm limited on space, so I have to delete shows to add a show. I delete a show, I add a show. I delete a show, I add a show. You got to get like a legitimate web hosting company. So we were using, before on my previous show, we were using Squarespace, and it was like this is going high, but $150 a year. So you buy the domain name, and that's like $20, and then you pay like $125 or something for the year, and then you renew. So it's basically you're paying the same shit every year. So almost $150. Unlimited storage, unlimited bandwidth, so you don't have to worry about anything. Like you can upload the biggest files you fucking want. You wouldn't want to do that anyway because it would cost you a lot of time, when you're going to upload. If you had like a 320 kbps MP3 file that you were loading up there, sure, they have the space for it and they don't care about the bandwidth, but you're going to be sitting there for an extra 5 minutes waiting for your shit to upload, and it's unnecessary and also it's not good for your listeners because if they want to download that off Wi-Fi, it's a huge ass file. So you want to keep it as compressed as possible, but with the best possible quality. So I would recommend 128 kbps. It's more than acceptable for voice. So having a good place for that shit to go is the key. So you got to get the website. I do recommend Squarespace. I highly recommend it because they actually have a podcasting kind of design flow to them. The way it's set up, if you you can start like a blog within that in that site that you set up, and within that blog, each blog post is a podcast. It gives you options to upload audio, upload a photo. There's settings for iTunes, like specifically, that you can go in and you just click here, upload, type this, type that, and you go. And it's just like, it's pretty much so streamlined for you. I've tried to do free stuff. There's like, what are those free like web blog pages that are out there? There was one that I tried to use, and I forget. It's very popular. I don't know. But anyway, I just suggest buying some hosting and stuff. You got to have hosting, because if you don't have anywhere to store those, you don't have any place for those shows to be stored, nobody's going to be able to access them. because you don't just upload them somewhere and they're just good for everybody. There's server space that those things have to be sitting on for people to actually play them and download them and stream them. So if you do, like I said, I recommend Squarespace. I really highly recommend it. And I know there's probably others out there, but that's the one that I found that worked for me, and it was so user-friendly, and I totally recommend it. But yeah, and now once you get that set up, you're not just uploading it there and it's going. You get what's called an RSS feed, and this is what nobody really told me about. So what an RSS feed is basically it's a URL of where your shows are getting uploaded. So if you do set up a blog page for your shows, your RSS feed is going to be the URL for your blog plus like an additional couple of characters plus the letters R, S, and S. And if you do set up something on one of these sites, they will tell you in the help like how to find out what your RSS feed URL actually is. Once you find out what that is, you can then submit that to iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, all of those apps. You can submit it to all of those guys, and every time, once they've accepted it and verified that it's a good working RSS feed and that your show is not hate content or super like copywritten rip-off stuff, or just stuff that they don't want up there. Once they verify it and they say you're good to go, every time that you actually upload an episode, they grab your RSS and they throw it up there, so you don't have to do it every time. Once you get established with your RSS feed and you're good to go, every show that you upload, they just grab it and it goes up there. You don't have to do it for every individual site, and it goes out to all these different mediums, and then people can discover them, whoever uses what. I find that most people, right now, this particular show we're listening to, the only place it goes is Podomatic, where I upload it, and then the RSS feed is in iTunes, so iTunes grabs it. But I just didn't put the time into getting this one on Google Play and all that stuff. I kind of dug around into getting it on Google Play, and although my previous show was on Google Play, for some reason I was having some issues with it, and I was like, I'm just going to stick with iTunes, and that's just me being lazy. Like, I would totally recommend getting on every format that you can, because there's going to be people out there that have Android phones, so they don't have iTunes. You know what I mean? So you want to have people that have Android, people that have an iPhone. You want to be on all of those platforms. And Stitcher's like that one goes across the board because it's just an app that you download. But yeah, you got to be everywhere. So yeah, you got to have the good hosting. You got to have the good site. The website's key. The website, microphone aside and everything, your voice has to be out there. You got to have that fucking good website. Otherwise, you're just not going to have anywhere for your shit to go. So that's basically number one. I know I did say to begin with, microphone was number one. I guess microphone's number two. I'm going to take that back.
So it post edit is. Are we going to magically put that back at the beginning?
Post edit. Yeah, no. Post editing is when you get the good sound. The post editing's pretty simple, so that's not so difficult. But
right. Well, that's good to know, because I already have a good website with a blog. It's actually a blog incorporated website. That's really where it got its start, and it's got an RSS feed. I actually just had to submit it to somebody to share my blog the other day. So
there you go.
It's good to know that the podcast will actually go through the RSS feed. And of course, there's always a little bit of legwork to do up front, but iTunes is obviously the biggest. It was actually the 10-year anniversary of the iPhone being released this week.
Yes, it was.
And I'm not an iPhone user.
No, I'm not either.
I'm a Droid user through and through. I've been using Stitcher. I've been playing my podcasts actually through my earbuds when I'm driving, which it's what I've been listening to most of my podcasts as of late. Really, really been enjoying that aspect of it. And it's funny because I almost searched for a podcast on how to do podcasting just 2 days ago on my drive through Maine.
I've tried it and it doesn't work.
And I was going to search, and I'm like, you know what? I would really like to have this first-person conversation with someone I actually know who's doing a podcast. And it's a pretty short list, but you have probably the most experienced. I've got two other acquaintances that are relatively new, and I know I'm going to be able to pick their brain as well. But it's just lessons learned. I know you have over the year, and I figured that this was the best way to go through. And I know that getting that voice out there is the number one thing. And I'm like, I knew in the back of my mind the number one thing is going to be, how the hell does it get on iTunes, because it's got to be there.
Yeah, that's the thing, because it's like you can't just go to iTunes and hit upload podcast. That's not how it works.
And Apple is so proprietary in what they use and what they share. I knew that was going to be the biggest obstacle, is getting basically on their platform. So it's kind of the reason why I've actually stayed away from them all these years, although I do have an iPod that I love. And of course, that's kind of going by the wayside because now it's everybody's phone. But I still love my iPod to death, and it's got 160 gig of music on it, and I can't imagine not having it. Now, I started putting my podcasts on there, and then I thought, I'm having a hard. I just don't plug it into my computer that often to update because I have so much on my iPod. I manually update my iTunes and my iPod to control what music is on, because I'm not going to put 160 gig on my computer. Put on. So,
well, thankfully, like, because of the iPod, that's where the podcast got their fucking name from. That's where the pod part came out.
Probably over the course of the last 10 years, the worst name of anything that I can remember is the term podcast.
I know. I actually don't really. I really don't like the name podcast. I dislike it as well. And whenever I say I'm doing a new one of these, I'm doing a new show. I like to call it a show. I don't want to call it a podcast. I've never had an iPod in my life. I've only listened to podcasts on my Android. So it's not a Droidcast, is it? They still call it a podcast. No, I'm listening to a program. That's what I'm listening to. I'm listening to a pre-recorded radio program.
There you go. And you just think of all the live radio. I've actually got a radio background, and all the years it was, doing your show, doing an episode. And I had skimmer tapes and actually recorded all of my old shows. They still exist. We were just talking about my DAT tape earlier off air, and I still have all of my DATs of my radio show. I mean, I could essentially dump those down and they'd become podcasts. They got 3 hours of music every Saturday.
And you know what's funny is I even like old radio shows. So like, have you ever heard of the show Car Talk on NPR?
Love Car Talk.
Love Car Talk. So obviously one of the hosts have passed away, but they still run all the old shows. The best ofs. Well, if you download the like NPR puts all that stuff out on podcasting apps, and they will call those shows now podcasts. Yep. They don't call them radio shows anymore. They call them podcasts.
That's very true. And I've actually got a couple of Car Talks on my Stitcher list later right now. I haven't had a chance to listen to them yet, but it's the same thing with, I listen to a lot of ESPN radio, a lot of sport talk, and they do their best ofs down to podcasts. They call it immediately available thereafter.
Once it's no longer a live show anymore, they call it a podcast.
But it's still the worst name ever.
I know.
It really, I don't know what would replace it and make it sound better.
Is it just us being old? Because we're older.
Get off my lawn.
Get off my lawn. Get off my lawn. Get off my phone. Remember that back in the radio days? Get off my phone.
Maybe it is just us being old.
I think it is.
I've never been a fan, and I don't know how old podcasting goes back.
I think it goes back. Bill Burr has been doing one since like 2008.
Okay, so we're approaching 10 years very quickly.
He's been doing 10 years. So no, 2007, I guess. I forget, but I remember I listened to Bill Burr's podcast, and he's like, I've been doing this for 10 years. And I'm like, 2007? I don't remember it being a thing. I mean, that doesn't mean it wasn't a thing. Maybe it was just, now it's becoming like shit's pre-programmed in your car, like in the car stereo and shit. Like Stitcher's like on my car stereo. Like it's one of the apps. So like you go on there. iHeartRadio, which is, what is that fucking basically? Clear channel. So yeah, it's Clear Channel being non-on-air radio. But yeah, it's like now it's all just comes standard. Like shit comes pre-programmed on your phone when you get it. Like there's apps already put on there. I'm like, this is crazy. So it's like just the way it's going now, and it's eventually like over-the-air radio is gotta go away.
We were saying that about Sirius and XM, and then they, of course, merged. Yeah. So I've got two cars that each have the subscription, so I'm a serious music junkie. So I finally get Sirius, essentially, when we get the new cars, and I realized that within the 30-day trial that comes with a car, I was already sick of satellite radio. I found it just absolute garbage, and I'm programming, in my opinion, of course, toot my own horn, slap me on the back, in at least my own opinion. My radio show that I was hosting locally 10 years ago is better than the national satellite station of playing the same format.
Yeah, because basically all they do is pump music out, and then you got the DJ that pops on every once in a while, just like around here, hey, blah blah blah, that was the blah blah, and this is blah blah blah, and we'll be right back, and blah. And
we'll also play this again tomorrow, about 8 hours from now, maybe, if you tune in at the right time.
Exactly.
Radio is just.
And granted, like with the satellite, the selection's a little bit better and it's a little more varied, but it's still kind of the same shit. I know I had the free thing too for a while, like 3 months I had it or something when it expired. And I got to tell you, when it expired, it was like pulling teeth to cancel that shit.
Yeah, they make it
like
very hard.
they make you call. Like I'm trying to go to the website and just cancel it through the website. They were like, no, you have to call us. And then you call and you get put on hold. And I'm telling you, it's a fucking racket just so you give up. Excuse me. And then you have to fucking pay for the next month. Because just like me, if you're just like me, you're a last minute guy. So the next day it was about to renew and hit my card. And I was on the, I'm trying to scramble to fucking cancel this shit. Because I'm like, I don't want to pay for this anymore. They know how to get you.
The number one lessons learned out of my satellite radio is you make sure they don't have a credit card on file so they can't auto-renew and never pay the sticker price, essentially.
Yeah,
just let it lapse for a little bit, and they're going to call you up and they're going to give you a 75% discount just to get you back. But I also learned that reception wasn't that great. You'd be driving down the interstate, clear skies, and all of a sudden, nothing at all. And it's like, there's nothing over my head. But I would had it programmed down to probably the same 4 stations. I just had a free sample again, and the nice thing was they just added a Beatles station. So huge Beatles fan. That was fantastic.
Beatles station started.
I don't miss it. But so that being said, so speaking of going back to podcasting and what we were talking about, Bill Burr's got a podcast, and I started listening to a little bit of Joe Rogan, who's got these, they call them long form podcasts.
Yeah, he does.
Just him never shutting up is really the big thing.
You know what's fucked up about that is I'll listen to this one podcast, and actually this show is going to be on that station that the people that have the pod. Long story. Anyway, they call it the full Rogan when they do a long show, like a 2.5 hour, 3 hour show. So basically he does a long format, like a Stern show. Mm-hmm. He does 3.5 hours, something like that. I have downloaded his podcast and I've tried to listen to it, and I like Joe Rogan a lot. I like his stand up, and I like to hear him rant a little bit, in small increments.
Yes.
I can't take 3 hours of Joe Rogan going off.
So even on a good topic or a good guest, it's just will you shut up?
It almost turns conspiracy theorists. I can't fucking do it. Sure. Oh, okay. Go ramble for 3 hours. That's great. I mean, I wish I could, but then again, if I did ramble for 3 hours, I wouldn't have anything to talk about for the whole next week. I don't even know how the guy does it, but still,
you bring in the good guests.
It's just too much.
You've got Joe, you've got comedy, you've got fitness, you've got technology, you've got music. So you've got all of these different things out there. What do you suggest is the best way to go about delivering out a podcast? Should it be a little bit of everything? Should it be a refined topic that you try to stay on?
In my research, so what I do is completely off the wall. I probably have shit for listeners I don't even know. I couldn't tell you. If you get a real website, you can find that shit out because, you can get the stats and stuff, and you probably know that already. The format that I use, I have shit for stats. They lie to you. They want you to pay, upgrade your account and pay money to, to get real stats. So I have no clue who listens or how many people do. I do know that they say, and I've done this research after having a podcast for a year, but I was always into that drive time, not necessarily Stern show. I love Stern, but there was this show on the radio for a while called The Don and Mike Show, which I fucking loved. I adored those guys. They had a great show. I guess the show I was doing before, I was kind of emulating them a little bit. More just banter format, and we'd bring up topics and stuff and discuss stuff that was out in the pop culture. But what they say to have is a niche podcast. So something that's just one subject that you elaborate on every week. You deal with, different topics on that subject. And those are the ones they say that succeed because you get the people that are interested in that particular thing, and they listen for each show. So the type of show that I'm doing right now with you, I was just a couple of days ago doing a show with Kate where we were talking about something completely different, not podcasting. There's people right now listening to this that are I don't ever want to start a podcast, so they're probably tuning out to this.
Skip.
I'm done with this one. That's fine. I'm all over the place, but they do say if you stick to the one thing, you'll get those people that are into that topic. And, especially for what you would mention to me that you were thinking about starting, you're going to get the people that are in in that field, and they're always going to want to be listening to things like that. So there are beer podcasts out there. I'm sure you listen to the local beer podcasts that come out around here, and I do as well. People that are into beer, listen to those. So you know what I mean? You're just going to get that. If you do this, if you put out the same product all the time, you're going to get the people that are into that product, and it's just, you're going to maintain an audience. Doing what I'm doing right now with my show is suicide because it's going to be different every time. So people are going to tune in. They're going to be like, oh, this is not what it was last time. Like, bye.
Right. And perhaps there's two philosophies about that, though. You've also, you can go into your podcast thinking, you know what, I just want to put my voice out there. I don't really care if anybody listens. It's a creative outlet. And then you have those that say, you know what, maybe I wouldn't mind also monetizing a little bit. And unfortunately, if I hear another Blue Apron commercial on a podcast, I'm going to slit my throat.
Yeah, I know.
I will never use the service anyways. Personally, I really enjoy cooking at home. For the gal, for the kids, and that type of thing. I can't imagine bringing in a service like that, and especially knowing our financial budget every week.
Blue Apron's not cheap.
It's right, and pretty much in one meal or two meals is my weekly budget for a family of four, and I nail it. And we eat well, we eat healthy, which is great. So, making a little bit of money is obviously a little bit of ambition for a few people in putting on a podcast. Have you looked into the potential of monetizing it all? What can you tell about that?
Going back to the actual specific topic kind of podcast, that's where you're actually going to have advertisers. If you get, I think they said some of the research that I've done is if you can get up to 1,000 listeners, and the people that are looking for advertising, they do monitor how podcasts are doing, because like you said, you've heard the Blue Apron commercial. I've heard it too. If you really are sick of hearing those fucking commercials, you got to listen to Bill Burr's podcast, because when he does his reads, he makes those very enjoyable to listen to. But anyway, that aside, and he has actually lost a couple of sponsors because of that. So
ballsy, but you know what? That's great. He doesn't exactly need his podcast to pat his pocket.
No, he doesn't. So. No, he's good to go. Okay. So, anyway, they say if you generate 1,000 listeners or more, you'll start getting approached by Blue Apron or
Squarespace,
MeUndies.
I hear Squarespace all the time on my first podcast I listen to.
So once you get 1,000 people. And they say the way to get those people is to have a podcast that is dedicated to one topic all the time. So I will probably you'll never hear a Blue Apron commercial on this show. You'll never hear a MeUndies commercial. You'll never hear a, what are the other ones? There's like fucking 4 other ones. I forget.
The amazing thing is how few there actually are, but they realize
like 6.
there is value obviously in sponsoring these podcasts, because they would not do it.
There's that bed company where they send you the sample bed and you can fuck on it for 100 days and send it back.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
My favorite podcast right now, one of them I should say, and it's sponsor free, are the Minimalists. And I saw them at Higher Ground recently, but they basically intro each and every one of their podcasts by saying, this podcast is brought to you by no one, because advertising sucks. And it's true. I mean, we all skip it. I just listened to Gary V podcast last night. He basically is talking about skipping the commercials on, with your TiVo now, with your DVR. I mean,
now, I did notice that there are a couple podcasts out there that will throw the commercials in, not at the same time. You won't see them coming, and you'll end up listening to it. You know what I mean? So you can't get used to their pattern. So it just happens, and you're just like, whatever, I just listen to it. Because a lot of the podcasting apps have like a 30 seconds forward.
Stitcher
or something.
Does the crazy thing, Rogan, the first 8 minutes of his podcast are commercials.
So he's like, skip.
This is ludicrous. It's like, will you just start the damn podcast? I mean, seriously.
We can skip this, It is not live. This is downloaded on my device. I can actually skip these.
Which is beautiful. And it all comes down to the same companies again, over and over and over again. I've been listening to a lot of fitness, health type of thing. Those are always the same ones. And it's like, I've never heard of any of these organizations or companies, and I probably won't solicit them. But hey, the money is obviously there. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So
they have it to throw out there, and they know that it's becoming the way it is. And I think there's at least a few companies out there that are like, this is like kind of where it's going. Like, it's going to be satellite radio and it's going to be podcasts. There's going to be, terrestrial radio is going to start to go away. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't really listen to it anymore. I mean, I listen to the local morning show that's on the AM station. Probably know which one I'm talking about.
On my way from my house.
Yep. On the way into work. And actually the guy, one of the DJs lives up on the corner over here. But I listen to that one just because it's talk radio. And it's like, I don't have to I save my podcast for when I get on the road. Yeah. Then I can, use those on my time.
Long form driving.
Exactly.
Me too. The listen later in Stitcher is the best thing ever. So
right?
I absolutely love it.
Exactly. So so I just think I think some advertise. That's why there's so few. There's like what? Like I think we just say there's probably 6 or 7 like that are on every single podcast. And not every podcast will have all of them, but every podcast will have at least a couple of them. So you hear the rounds of those. I think these people are already on board with, kind of a projection that this is where it's going to go. Like it's going to be people podcasting. And yeah, there's going to be a bazillion podcasts out there and 78% of them are going to suck. But you're going to find that like 22% or whatever that are going to be like amazing. And, they want to make sure that they're there for it. You know what I mean? And so they're getting into it. I do listen to a lot of like shitty ones, like what we're doing here in my basement. It's same people doing it in their basement and they don't have any sponsors. They're just doing it for fun, which is what I'm doing it for. It's fun. I love doing it. I love playing with my gear. I love having my gear. I've always been a techie guy. I've been an audio guy. I've been a computer guy. I like turning dials and pushing fucking buttons and stuff. And it's therapeutic.
Sure.
So
there's a couple of quick questions. I don't know, quick they are necessarily, but 2 things that have popped into my head that I definitely want to cover before we wrap up. And that's one of them. Let's see. You already talked a little bit off the air and also on the air about when we were just talking about money. So let's say financial buy-in. So you talked about, let's say registering Squarespace for a year, say $150. What would you think is a minimum proper financial investment to throw down to get your portable recorder, perhaps a couple of good quality microphones, or at least one? How much are you looking to shell down?
You're going to look at, all right. So if you go portable recorder, now the portable recorders, some of them only have 2 mic inputs. If you're going to have like a 2-person podcast, which most people do is like one host, one co-host, it doesn't leave you any more spaces for a guest that you're going to have on a microphone. But then again, that would require another microphone. So if you're not planning on having that kind of show where you have a guest every once in a while and you do interviews, that's not going to matter to you. It basically depends on what kind of podcast you want to do. But I do recommend, if you are going to go portable recorder, to save yourself a little time in post, buy yourself a cheap $120 mixing board that has some EQ on it. You can go into that with usually up to 4 microphones. So that'll eliminate that obstacle. And then there's like a cord that you can buy. I'm not going to get into the details on these. There's a cord you can buy for about $7-8, which I'm using right now, that goes from the mixing board into the recorder. It's only using 1 channel. So it's recording both of us right now, but only using 1 channel on the thing. So in essence, like if we got down to the nitty gritty and I had shit tons of microphones right now, with what I have set up, I could have 10 people plugged into this setup right now. Like I said, portable recorder, you're going to run, I'm going to go high. I'm going to go high with this because you can either go down from here or you can go up. So I'm going to go kind of high, but kind of in the middle. $300 for a portable recorder. Probably a little less if you do your shopping. Look in the Zoom line. They have good stuff. That's what I use. But there are other things. Tascam makes some. I think there might be others. But as long as you look at portable recorders, you're going to get that whole line of things. And make sure you get ones with XLR inputs, because that's the microphones that you're going to want to be using. So once you see the portable recorders with the XLR inputs, you'll know you're in that range. So I'm going to say $250 to $300 on the portable recorder. If you want to throw pre-EQ on, $129 for a mixing board, couple sets of headphones. Don't buy $100 headphones. You're going to break them anyway. Just buy $30 headphones, $25 headphones, but you need some headphones. And you'll probably need a headphone splitter if you're going to do 2 people and you don't want to buy, like right now I use a headphone amplifier, and I output the 1 headphone jack that I do have on the portable recorder, and it splits it to 4 headphones. So if I have 4 people here, they all have their own volume control. They all have their own output. That was $30. I mean, you can nickel and dime this stuff all day. I'd say to get out like a really decent setup, and you're gonna want your booms too. This boom that I'm on, Eric, right now, you can see it. The audience can't. This is $100. The one you're using is like $13 on fucking eBay or Amazon, and that's really all you need if you have like a nice little desk setup that 2 people can sit at. $28 for those. I'd say a nice for $500, $600, you could have 2 people talking and going. no problem. And if you really went the used way, and like I said, microphones, good microphones are good to have. I just tapped on that. There are inexpensive microphones. If you go condenser mic, not highly recommended. You can make them sound fucking amazing. But if you're talking in a room that's large with a large open space, you're going to get a lot of that background echoey noise. If you're in a room with a lot of clothes and it's like dead, like when you talk and you don't hear your voice echo on the wall, a condenser mic will work for you. And they're a lot cheaper, and they have very bassy qualities to them. I have a couple of them. I've actually done some shows with them, and they're fine down here, like when I'm by myself, because like I can just get close and talk lower. But if if I have multiple people talking and stuff, like you can hear them like in it, and like it just gets that echoey kind of quality to it. So those are less expensive, but not preferred if you're looking for that studio quality sound, like I was talking to begin with. So I'd say about $600 is about what it's going to take equipment wise to get a nice good setup and sound. But like I said, you don't have to use the mixing board, so you can eliminate $129-$130. You can go directly into your portable recorder. If it's not as bassy as you'd like, you can do that in post. So you just need some software.
So this is dangerous. The more and more we talk, the more and more questions that actually pop into my head, which isn't a horrible thing, other than to make this succinct and keep it so that we're not losing the
it's
two listeners.
It's dangerous for me because I've got to piss so fucking bad right now.
Yeah, I guess we do need to wrap it up. So the other term that comes up when I think of podcasts is the term show notes, which I get sick of hearing occasionally with people. Do you do show notes? What do you suggest with show notes?
Fucking show notes. It's a pain in the ass because all it is just a description for people to read before they listen to your podcast. And I find show notes, like, although you can be nice and put them in there for people to read, but if people read them and they're like, I don't think I want to listen to that, they're not going to fucking listen to your show. So I put a very brief description of my podcast in show notes. I'm like, yep, it's me and this person. We talk about this real quick. If you get too detailed, you're just going to give them the whole show and they're not going to listen to it. Right. Okay. So keep those brief. It's the tags that you want to make sure that you use, though. The tags, they'll let you put in tags, and those are like search tags that people could use in iTunes. So if they're like, you're going to be talking about, what's your topic again? Construction, right? So somebody's like, they want to talk about this certain kind of drill or whatever. If you're talking about Makita drills, boom, you tag Makita in there, right. And people will search sometimes in what they want to hear about. Like you wanted to hear a podcast about podcasting and you couldn't fucking find it, right? Probably because nobody ever made one, but probably because nobody used tags either, if there's one out there. I've looked for it too.
So the world's second largest search engine, perhaps, YouTube. Is there anything wrong with putting your podcast on YouTube, using that as an outlet and having a stationary image with just your audio behind it?
A lot of people do it. The only thing I have against it personally is, and it's fine for me, I don't have an issue with it because I have a good data plan and I have a lot of fucking data, but video is video. Even though it's just audio, it's still a fucking video file. So it uses more of your data to like stream that on the go, unless somebody has YouTube Red or whatever where they can download it, and I almost want to say that YouTube, even though I don't have YouTube Red, YouTube has given me the option to download shit offline. So that might be a thing now. And if that's a thing, then there's no problems with that at all.
Right.
So people can download it, and it's like, I think a video is like, shit, it's not even like 100 megabytes. It's not even that. It's like 80 megabytes or something like that. I mean, I have downloaded audio stuff with a stationary picture, and it's not that large. So it's not it wouldn't be that big of a deal, I don't think.
And plenty of people, I would surmise, listen to podcasts while stationary at their desk. So I'd say before you...
if they're on their computer, yeah.
Before you lose this one, I would say let's put it on YouTube somewhere and at least have it...
This one? I'm going to pump this out. Like as soon as we're off, I'm going to produce it and put it on the internet.
Yeah, but then I would say before you lose it on your, if you're 4 deep... we'll put it on YouTube somewhere, and at least there's a permanent archive.
Well, I'll send you an MP3 of it if you want to put it
as
somewhere.
well. I'll put it on my YouTube, which is, it's weird what gets listens on YouTube. I've got my oldest daughter is coming in to visit Sunday. She's 15 and now lives in Los Angeles. When she was in Pennsylvania, and she's 7 years old, singing "Your Grand Old Flag" has got 250,000 views.
Yeah, it's
You know,
crazy.
it's nuts. And then I've got some great stuff from like Ryan Montbleu and Milton Busker singing live at, Radio Bean, and there's, 14 views, and it's like, things don't make any sense. So probably the last question already jumped out of my mind, and you're doing the pee-pee dance.
I'm fucking dying.
It's all of those Labatt Ice.
I think I pre-gamed before you came too, so I'm
that's understandable. So, hey, I can't think of anything else right offhand. Maybe if I do, there happens to be a part B. And hey, if nothing else, we're going to continue to talk off the air and finish this very fine beer that we have going on and keep going. But I think this is a great introduction to setting up a podcast. And I seriously can't thank you enough for taking the time to
absolutely. And you can hit me up. You got my text now. I've quit the Facebook for the summer, folks.
I had to get it from the girl. I had to get it from Kate.
Yeah. And Eric knows
Paul's digits.
Eric knows where to find my woman. So he found her and got my digits. And I'm done with the Facebook for the summer, folks. Little hiatus. I want to enjoy more of less screen flicking with my finger and more maybe playing my guitar or, figuring out some audio shit and playing around fucking shit down here. Maybe making my podcast a little bit better. So that's my plan for the summer. Any questions you have for me? We can continue off the air. After I drain the lizard, because this needs to happen pronto. I don't think I've ever been so close to actually pissing my pants than I am right now.
I can't think of anything at all. I mean, this has been a great, essentially, startup episode. And, as most podcasts are, start up somewhere. And this has been a great little how-to. So, Paulie V, I cannot thank you enough for doing this.
Thanks for stopping by, Eric. It's been good to talk to you. And this has been Off the Table.